great to see you. Great to see so many people out here. And I just hope that everyone is doing well. I know that we're all doing our social distancing, very important. And I know there's been some people ill in the community. So let me just share my wishes for a refuah shalema for anyone, of course, whether it's in our community or anywhere for that matter. And we should just see a lot of geula. I guess geula is something we've all been thinking about. Maybe that kind of influenced me in thinking about this Shabbat HaGadol. You know, every year I get up, I say, "Welcome to the Shabbat HaGadol Drasha." Here we are. Well, here we are in a different format. And I was thinking to myself, you know, imagine if back on January 1st, say, someone had predicted that by mid-March, every sports stadium in the world is going to be shut down. No sports, no Wimbledon, nothing. All of sports are gonna shut down. You know, if someone had made such a prediction, I think that we would have said, "You're crazy? Are you nuts?" I mean, we would think, look, if you would say, "Hey, you know what? All of sports is going to shut down," maybe that's something that would happen over decades or centuries of societal change. And I mean, here we are. It's April, and there's not a single sports event taking place in the entire world. And that's just sports. I mean, never mind the arts or restaurants or shows or places of worship. So there's really dramatic change here, and it's change we never could have imagined, but here it is. And I think that one of the things that happens for us, I know it happens for me, is that when we're in turbulent times, I think that we want to have some sort of some sense of reassurance. We're looking for answers, and we want to know what's the meaning of this time. Is this time leading to Mashiach? Are we about to enter the Messianic era? What reassurance is there that we are going to a good place? Now, the truth is, I'm not any more sure than you are about when Mashiach is coming. However, I will say something that we all know, but just reaffirm it for you. God is leading the world. Hashem is leading the world to a good place. And we might not know exactly when Mashiach is coming or exactly the meaning of our events. However, I think there's something that this time teaches us. I think it's relevant to understanding the idea of Mashiach. I think it's very relevant to Pesach, and I want to look at that with you because I think it can really impact and shape our experience this Pesach. So what I'd like to do with you is a few things. I want to take a look at what's the Jewish idea of Mashiach, the Messiah. Number one. What's the proper Jewish attitude? How should we view it? What's the proper Jewish way of approaching that? And how does the idea of Mashiach really influence our Pesach Seder, our Pesach experience? Those are a few things that I wanted to address with you tonight. Now, before I go on, I'll just give you a chance. Does anyone want to type in the chat box anything else that they would like to see us get out of this evening? Any other questions? I can't guarantee. But does anyone else want to share with us anything that you were hoping to learn about? Anyone? Don't all shout at once. Well, I guess I've really covered it. This is amazing. Is there really no comments? Okay. Gadi, do you have a comment? I guess not. Okay. So I'm really on my own here. I'm scared. Well, I've got to be self-reliant here. So Pesach we'll address those questions. We'll leave it at that, okay? Now, Pesach has the power to transform our lives. And, so someone is asking, do you think Mashiach is imminent? Right. So we'll try to address whether Mashiach is imminent, and I will base it on gematrias from Yechezkel. So Pesach has, from Aki Flesh, hoping to hear about the role of Eliyahu Hanavi. Oh, I'm very glad Aki mentioned Eliyahu Hanavi. I will try to put that in here. And when do we get the planes back home? It depends if the airlines go bankrupt, Jose. So the idea of Eliyahu is something I almost missed, but I will try to put it in there. So thank you so much, and please feel free to comment as we go on. I want to say that Pesach is a transformative experience, and we are part of a tradition where Jews have been experiencing Pesach Seders in every situation imaginable. In the Chorban, pogroms, running from Spain to Israel, in poverty, in concentration camps. Jews have celebrated Pesach Seders. We are no stranger to difficult circumstances for Pesach. And I want to share with you something that took place in the 1950s. There was an amazing family in Kiev known as the Maislik family. And these were people, they were unbelievable in their devotion to Torah and Mitzvot. What they went through to keep the Torah and Mitzvot, unbelievable. And this family would have to start to prepare. We have the Bodzin asking, is Hashem trying to teach us something special? And yeah, we will get to that. Thank you very much. But back to my comment. The Maislik family would start to prepare for Pesach in the middle of the winter in January. They would be procuring wheat illegally from farmers, which you weren't allowed to do in the Soviet Union, to start to dry it out and make matzah in their tiny basement apartment in Kiev. And they were very poor. They used to look for vegetables in the garbages of Kiev for their cholent, to have food in their cholent. And as poor as they were, there were people that would come to them. Their house was filled with people every single Shabbat. But one year, it happened that there were no guests. And the reason that there were no guests is because Yehuda Leib Maislik, the head of the family, was taken to prison by Stalin's people, the KGB, I guess, for teaching Torah to Jews, which he was doing underground. And Basia Maislik, the daughter, was so bereft of her father, and she was just alone with her mother. Riza, I think was her name. And she describes how she shows up to the table with her mother, and suddenly there's no guests. And here at the Pesach table, she bursts into tears. And her mother held her as she wept at the Pesach Seder. That was the beginning of that Pesach Seder. Now, amazingly, that turned into a night of redemption, a night of song. How were they able to turn that experience around? That's something that I want to share with you. It's something I want to talk with you about. I'm going to save that a little bit. But before we talk about how they were able to have this transformative experience, what I want to show you is that our rabbis told us to really look at the concept of the Mashiach on Pesach. And in fact, on the 8th day of Pesach, we read the Yeshayahu Yud Aleph, the 11th chapter of Isaiah. And I want to take a moment with you to just look at this. There's really an incredible chapter over here, which I'm going to share with you. I want to see if I can do this successfully here. I hope that you can see the screen over here. So this is the 11th chapter of Yeshayahu. And I'm just going to describe it in broad terms. The prophet says that there will be a leader that will arise in the future, and it will be that a shoot will grow out of the stump of Yishai, a twig will sprout from a stalk. And this will be a leader that will be completely guided 100% by the Spirit of Hashem. He will be girded with the fear of God and with faith. And every judgment, every ruling that comes out of his mouth will be guided by his knowledge and his awe of Hashem. Those are the first 5 verses there, speaking about this great leader that we could only dream about. And then in verses 5 through 9, the Hanavi talks about a future time when there will be world peace, and he uses allegories saying that the wolf will lie down with the lamb, and the cow and the lion will pasture their young together. And these are parables for saying that, or allegories for saying that there will be world peace. And as Yeshayahu says, Lo yisagoy al goy cherub, v'lo yamuldu od milchama. Nation will not lift sword against nation, and they will no longer learn warfare. There will be an incredible peace because the whole world will be gathered under one banner. And later in the chapter, it talks about the ingathering of exiles. But perhaps the crescendo of the whole chapter is in verse 9, where the Navi says, Lo yariu v'lo yashchisu b'chol har kadshi. There will not be any evil that takes place upon my mountain. Ki mala haaretz dea es Hashem. Because the world will become filled with the knowledge of God. Kamayim liyam mechasim. Knowledge of God will fill the world like water covers the seabed. And so this is an incredible vision. The Rambam, by the way, says, if you want to know why it is that we should want the Mashiach, this is why we should want Mashiach. We should want Mashiach so that the world unites under one banner of everyone being filled with the Spirit of God, everyone recognizing God within one another. And so if we want to have an optimistic vision of the world, if we want to have an optimistic vision of our future, it's hard to think of a more optimistic vision than that of Yeshayahu. It's an incredible thing over here that's happening. And the Ramchal actually says in Das Tfunos, he says that before Mashiach, chutzpah will abound and prices will soar. I actually never knew that prices was referring to toilet paper. But in any case, the prophet in Yirmiyahu says, I shall pour my spirit upon mankind. And Yeshayahu says, many nations will go and say, let us ascend to the mountain of Hashem, and he will teach us his ways. This is the vision, that all of mankind will be imbued with the spirit of Hashem. Everyone doing tzedek, righteousness, recognizing the godly image in every single person. And people uniting under one banner. And a little bit, we can start to see that in our days. We see it a little already. I mean, think about it. Just this past week, you had the governor of Massachusetts and a Chinese diplomat getting together along with the patriots to bring millions of face masks to Massachusetts. Wherever the relationship between China and America is going, we have to work together. And we could see in small ways sometimes people coming together. And so perhaps there is a way that we see people coming together. Now, if you see any way, if anyone in our audience tonight sees some ways that people are coming together, unity that have moved you, maybe you can share them with us in our chat box, and people can see that if you've seen anything unique. So we're now, and I'll read them if they come through. We're now going to look at the Pesach Seder, because I think what we see from the prophet is the idea that there's this messianic age when the whole world comes under one concept, and the Seder really points to this idea of transformation, that the world really can transform. It's really something that's kind of deep in the Seder. It's really what the whole Seder is really about, is the idea of transformation. And again, I'm going to share with you over here our source sheet, because we're going to take a look at the Mishnah right now. If you can see the source right now, go down here. This is the Mishnah. Are you seeing it in your screen? Yes. Okay. So the Mishnah says, "Matchil beganut masayim b'shavach." We begin the Seder with the denigration, talking about the problems of the past, and then, but by the end of the Seder, we are praising God. And the Mishnah, of course, goes on to say that we expound the verses of Arami Oved Avi that talk about the whole history of the Jewish people, from the time that Yaakov was a poor, destitute refugee, to the Jewish people being this great, mighty, powerful nation. And the whole Seder is built upon that. The whole Magid section, the main section of Magid is built upon that. And through Magid, we actually do 5 mitzvot, right? We eat matzah, we retell the Exodus, we drink the 4 cups of wine, we eat maror, we recite Hallel. Each of these is one aspect of how we relive and re-experience the Exodus. And then the Mishnah quotes Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel haya omer, kol shalomar shlosha devarim elu b'Pesach. Anyone who has not mentioned these 3 core concepts, lo yafsi yedei chovato, is not fulfilled his obligation. V'elu hen, and these are them. Pesach matzo maror. There's 3 things, really 3 foods when you think about it, which are the 3 core concepts. And each of these concepts are really about transition, because maror was what we ate in subjugation, matzah is what we ate in redemption, and Pesach is really sort of the in-between food. So really the whole Maggid section is built on this idea of transforming and transitioning. Now, by the way, I want to point out, I know that a number of people might be fulfilling the Seder by themselves for the first time. And so I actually want to share with you a document. I'm not going to go through it right now, but one second, if I can just find it right here. I thought I had it. Okay, I'm not going to spend time looking for this. I'll have to email it to you afterwards. But I have a Pesach Seder map that I'm going to be sharing with you. So let's go through the Drasha, and then we'll find that afterwards. But I have a map which will help you move through the Seder. But in any case, okay, what we've seen is that the Maggid section very much looks back in history and looks on all the transitions that have happened in the past. Now, let me pose a question. You can turn on your microphone if you want to answer this, or put it in the chat box. What is a section of the Haggadah that does not look backwards but actually looks forwards to the future? If Maggid looks to the history, what looks to the future of the Jewish people? Which section?
Hallel.
Hallel, okay. Henry says Hallel, interesting. There is an element of future. Anything else? I was actually thinking some, what?
Nirtzah?
Nirtzah, yeah. So Nirtzah, which is the end of the Seder, is really very future looking. Kathy saying, correct, Kathy, next year, L'Shana Haba Yerushalayim, next year in Yerushalayim. And this is really, most of us, by the way, I get very tired at the end of the Seder, by the way. So sometimes I fall asleep for Nirtzah. But what happens is if you stay awake for it, it's really a very different part of the Seder that starts looking to the future. In fact, starts looking towards the Mashiach. Okay. Now, Aki earlier, right? Aki said earlier, what is the role of Eliyahu Hanavi? Now, even before Nirtzah, we have the cup of Eliyahu, which announce it, and it's also mentioned in our Haftarah this week in the prophet Malachi, that Eliyahu sort of symbolizes welcoming the redemption, because Eliyahu was a person who was so steadfast in his faith in Hashem. He was like a rock of Hashem, and he represents commitment to Hashem in all circumstances. And so he is the Mevaser. He's the one who announces the Mashiach. But when you look at Nirtzah, from the beginning of Nirtzah, we say L'Shana Haba Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, and then we start singing songs like Adirhu, which speak about how God will rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. And then it all crystallizes at the end of Nirtzah, for those of you who can stay awake, in Chad Gadya. Now, you say Chad Gadya, what's with that? Is that really? Isn't that just like a little jingle? Like, after a long, serious Seder, the rabbis wanted to have a little bit of fun. Well, actually, our sages viewed Chad Gadya as a serious parable, as quite a serious thing, a synopsis of Jewish history, in which we see all of the animals of history that seem to be so powerful. And in the end, it is Hashem who is atop the ladder. Now, can anyone think to themselves, do you know any time in history when it seems like the nations are powerful, and then all of a sudden you realize we're not as powerful as we think we are? Our times indeed. But listen, just think about the Chad Gadya. I want to share with you the Pirush, the explanation of Rav Yonatan Eibeshitz, who was an 18th century Torah luminary. According to Rav Eibeshitz, the goat, the Gadya, was the Jewish people purchased with two zoos, with two covenants, the covenant of bris milah and the covenant of bris bein habasarim. And then the cat that ate the goat is Egypt, which is an animal according to our rabbis that symbolizes not recognizing its master. The dog came next. That's Amalek, who was the opponent of Israel. The stick that beat the dog is the staff of Moshe, who led the Jewish people. But in the end, the stick was burned by the fire when the first temple was destroyed in the fires of Babylonia. But later, the waters quenched the fire. The waters of Ezra, the waters of Torah that rejuvenated the Jewish people when we came back to the land of Israel. But then an ox came and consumed the water. And the ox, as we know, is Yavin, is grease that licks up the water. A slaughterer came and did away with the ox. The slaughterer is the Chashmonayim, who led us in the days of Hanukkah. The angel of death is Titus in Rome, who put an end to the Chashmonayim. But then the Holy One, blessed be He, slaughtered the slaughterer. And so Nirtza teaches us that there's all these great animals of history. There's all these powers that seem to be. And atop that, all those great powers is Hashem. Hashem slaughters the slaughterer. And so Nirtza is the ultimate realization. We went through Magid, and Magid we look back, and we look back on all the transition that we went through. We relive it. We go from Maror to Matzah. But in Nirtza, we're very much looking forward. And so in a sense, the Pesach Seder is really a series of transitions, a series of realizations. And when we delve into this experience, it's something that we transform through. And this is really how Basia and Riza Meislich were able to have joy on that night of the Seder. I mean, there they were, their father, he had been through everything, the father. He had kept Torah and mitzvot in the Russian army, of all places. But now he was languishing in Stalin's prison. What could happen here? How could the mother comfort her daughter? And her daughter was a teenager this time. So the mother said like this, Basia, what the Seder teaches us is true in the night of exile as well as during the day. No matter how dark the night gets, we must always wait for the dawn of redemption. What was Mrs. Meislich referring to? Which part of the Haggadah? Well, I'll show you which part of the Haggadah she was referring to. It's a well-known part of the Haggadah. It's the portion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Do you see the screen? The Haggadah says that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, lo zachisi shete'amer yetzias Mitzrayim belelos. All of his life, he wanted to talk about the Exodus at night. He just never was able to do it. Only when Ben Zoma came along and darshaned, he made a drasha, he expounded the verse. Which verse did he expound? This one. The verse says, Lo tochal of chametz shivat yamim tochal of matzot lechem oni ki b'chipazon yatsasim eretz Mitzrayim. You came out of Egypt in haste. And so remember that. L'man tizkor, in order that you should remember, es yom seischa mieretz Mitzrayim kol yemei chayecha, that you should remember the day that you came out of Egypt, all the days of your life. Why does it say all the days of your life? All along, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he wanted to connect to the Exodus at night. But until Ben Zoma pointed out, the verse says all the days of your life, not only during the daytime, not only when it's light, not only when there's abundant light, but even when there's darkness, even when it's concealed, even in those times, you are able to connect to Hashem. That's the teaching of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that in all times, and that's what Basia's mother, Riza, was telling her, even in the darkness, we're able to connect. And that's how they were able to literally go from a situation where they were crying to great joy. And I want to read to you what Basia says at this point. She says, when her mother taught her this teaching that we remember the Exodus at all times, even in the darkness of night, I pulled myself together and we started the Haggadah. I did my best to recall Tati's beautiful explanations of each passage. On that Seder night, I saw Mama as I'd never seen her before, in all her greatness and strength of spirit. In the end, the Seder that had begun so sadly left us feeling uplifted and encouraged. And so there they were, this family in a tiny basement apartment in Kiev. Their father's in Stalin's prison. And on the night of Pesach, connecting to these words of the Haggadah, they were able to sing Hallel. They were able to bring themselves to a completely different situation. And we have to think about that. That's something that really touches upon an inner potential, an inner power that we have in our own lives. We too are able to access the Pesach Seder, and we are able to have a transformative experience. And by the way, as a footnote, there was a whole miracle. The father ended up getting out of prison, and about 10 years later, they actually emigrated to the land of Israel. And that's all recorded in a book called The Voices of Silence, which I highly recommend. As we look at this situation, I think there's a couple of things that we're yearning for. On one level, we want to see the world have a geula from its present situation. We're in a difficult situation in a number of ways. And we want for there to be a redemption. And at the same time, we also want for there to be a geula for each of us personally. Is this a time that we should anticipate the coming of Mashiach? Yes. And we also don't know when Mashiach will come. And in any case, regardless of when Mashiach comes, we can't really know when Mashiach is going to come. But regardless of when that is, we have to deal with the time that we're living in, regardless of whether Mashiach is coming. And so we have to find a way to work within our time and to deal with that. And we're in this time now, and there's things that we can learn and gain from this time that are of great importance. And I wanted to talk about those times, about those aspects, because I think they can help us in our experience. I think that one thing we can learn from this period of time is that change can happen very, very quickly. We saw that verse that says that eat matzot and remember that you came out quickly. The Maharal says that one of the great foundations of the whole Exodus is the idea that things change very fast. God is not limited by time. God created time. God is above time. And in God's world, things can change very, very quickly. We never could have imagined the types of changes that have taken place over the past weeks. And we might not be able to imagine how Yeshayahu's vision of a world in which knowledge of God fills the world, we might not be able to imagine that right now. But in Hashem's world, God is not limited by time. That's one point. In addition, I think something that we see in our times is the underlying unity of the world. And that doesn't mean that all the problems have gone away. It doesn't mean that there's not a lot of politics and strife. But I think that in a time like this, we see more than ever that we really do have to work together, whatever the relationship between China and the US is. And I know there's a lot of things in the news, but whatever it is, the reality is that we're connected. The reality is that what happens in China influences the United States and vice versa. And so in a certain sense, we can see that we can see that this very important idea that the world really is one. When Yeshayahu said it in his days, it was a very revolutionary concept, but it's something that we see right now. And I think we also see what that things that we thought were permanent are not necessarily as permanent as we thought. Our stocks can get washed away. And in light of that, what really is permanent, what really is lasting, is the knowledge of Hashem, our connection to God, to the Torah. And in fact, the Rambam says this really should be our attitude. This really should be the reason that we want the Mashiach. If you look in the Rambam says on the screen share that our sages and prophets, they didn't want the Mashiach because they want to eat, drink, and be merry. They wanted it because of this verse in Yeshayahu. They wanted it because Kimala Aretz Dea Es Hashem, the world would be filled with the knowledge of God. And so we're really at an incredible stage right now. We don't know exactly where the world is going right now. But there are deep things that are happening in our world. And those deep things are happening just below the surface. And that's an important thing for us to keep in mind. Imagine if there's a seed in the ground and the seed is growing and developing. While the seed is concealed, while it's hidden, it's having tzmicha, it's having sprouting, it's starting to sprout, but in a concealed way. So much is happening, even more than when it grows above the ground. Similarly, our rabbis talk about the Chavlei Mashiach, the birth pains of the Messiah. Imagine when a woman is pregnant and the fetus is concealed. You don't see it. I guess you see it these days with an ultrasound, but we don't see it with the naked eye. But so much is happening underneath the surface. There's things that are not revealed. And there's very big changes that are taking place in the world today. We might not know exactly what those are. We might not know exactly where it's going, but it is bringing the world closer to Yeshayahu's vision. And when great things are ready to sprout forth, God is not limited by time. It can sprout forth from the world and emerge suddenly in a very unexpected way, just like our situation has come about in an unexpected manner. And one thing is for sure, our world, our Jewish community, and we ourselves, we're going to be different because of this. This is going to change a lot. And so while our world is going through transformation, so are we. And I think that those transformations that we're going through are taking place within the privacy of our homes and our inner lives. I'll just share with you something personal. These past weeks have really brought me back to a different time in my life. When I was 19 years old, I had spent a year in Israel, and I came back and spent a summer at home between Israel and going to college. And I was sort of by myself, keeping Shabbat, observing Torah and Mitzvot to the best of my ability. And I was in Leominster, Massachusetts. I was all by myself, without an observant community. And I would take long Shabbat walks sometimes, and I would sit in my room and learn for hours by myself. I remember davening by myself. And there was even a year that I made a Pesach Seder by myself. I actually had a Pesach Seder that I played every role. And in a sense, it was challenging at the time, but it also brought out something in me that I realized when I left that situation, that my Judaism wasn't just something that was social or a result of some place that I happened to be or not be. My Yiddishkeit was me. And I've been reminded about that these past weeks. I wouldn't choose to not daven at the minyan. I love davening with the tzibur. But I've been kind of brought back to that a little bit, davening by myself and saying, okay, what can I do? Perhaps I can say every word of Psukei de Zimra. Perhaps there's something inside me and that can come out in this time that didn't come out before. And so I think that each of us have a path. We're all growing in something. There's some way that we're sprouting, and it's concealed. And even as our world is changing, there's also something deep that's happening inside of us. And so what I want for you to do is to take the time and make sure that you look at yourself and your own growth. The Pesach Seder really points directly to the Omer and counting towards Har Sinai. Take a look at this and consider what your path of growth is. There is something in this concealed time that can come out from you that is different and that is beautiful, and that it can come out through Pesach. And so from our own journey, God willing, we should increase in our own connection to Torah and knowledge of Hashem. And God willing, from all that we do, we should soon realize the time that Yeshayahu spoke about, that the knowledge, the spirit of Hashem will literally fill the world in the very same way that water covers the seabed.